Hello, welcome to my channel. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen. Thank you so much for clicking on the thumbnail and joining me today. I hope you'll stick with me to the end because I've got some fantastic captive romance recommendations for you. So if you've watched any of my videos before, then you'll know that I'm a massive dark romance fan and also a mafia romance fan, and a lot of dark and mafia related romances do tend to have a captive trope in them, particularly if you're reading a series. So there's no surprise that I do have some mafia and dark romance recommendations in here. But I do have a few recommendations that sit outside of the mafia world, including an Omega-verse, a fantasy romance, and also a MMA fighter romance as well. The first one I want to talk about is the Alphas Seduction by Marlowe Roy, and this one is book 2 in the After End series, and this one is an Omega-verse romance, and it's also fated mates, as you would expect with Omega-verse. So in this one we're following Cal and Della. Now in this world, in the After End world, basically kind of like an apocalypse situation has sort of happened, and in the aftermath of this apocalypse, a new breed of humans has arisen from the ashes, and we now have alphas, omegas, and also betas. But there are also some old humans that were alive before the end, and they are quite long-lived. They're quite old. They seem to be a unique species all of their own, but very much the hero from book 1 is a guy called Hunter. He used to be a doctor in the real world, and he is one of the old ones. He's also an alpha, and he is the alpha of alphas, and he has basically formed his own sort of encampment, colony, which is a safe place for alphas and omegas alike. Now he is very open-minded and quite liberal, particularly when it comes to the omegas compared to other colonies or encampment or camps that are out there in the world, because he came from before the end. And he absolutely wants to make sure that omegas have a choice about who they're partnered with, and also looked after. So a lot of omegas come to his compound for safety, and he keeps them secure. So in book 1 we followed Hunter's story and how he found his omega. Now Hunter has a friend from the from before, and this is Della. This is our heroine in this one, and so she's one of the older humans as well. She used to be a senator and she was married, but during sort of, you know, this thing that happened on Earth to bring about the end, she was separated from her husband. Her husband ended up dying in a fire, and she made her way to eventually to Hunter's encampment. Now she, like I said, she's a very old human. She was alive before the end, and she is long-lived, but she has never come into any kind of omega tendencies or anything like that. So as far as she knows, she isn't an omega. That is until Cal comes to the camp. Cal is a alpha from the New World, and so he's much younger than Della in actual years, so I guess this is also a reverse age gap as well. But as soon as Cal sees Della, he recognises that she's his mate, and because they're now in close proximity together, Della eventually starts to realise that she is an omega after all, and, you know, it brings on her first heat. However, Della is very, very cautious. She still mourns the death of her husband, even though it's been many, many years, and she isn't really ready to accept the fact that she's an omega or that Cal is her fated mate. However, fate intervenes because Cal overhears a plot with another guy in camp called Silas, and basically Silas is basically betraying the camp with another group of alphas that don't reside in the camp, and their plan to basically come into the camp, fight the alphas and take the omegas for themselves. So Cal sort of like overhears that this plot is going to happen. He tries to fight Silas, and as a result of this fight, Della is in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he ends up kidnapping her to take her to safety, to take her out of the clutches of Silas. But what it becomes then is a captive situation, because he basically takes her off away from the encampment. They find a cave. He basically makes a camp, and he forces her to stay in the cave with him because in his mind she's his fated mate and he wants to keep her safe, but Della does want to get out of this cave, and therefore she becomes his captive. Of course, while they're in the cave together, she goes through her heat, so they form a relationship, they form their bond. But after the heat is passed, Adela realises that she needs to go back to the camp to warn the camp about what's going to happen, warn them about Silas, and make sure that they save the other Omegas. And Cal does this reluctantly and to great consequence for him, because when he goes back to the camp, the other Alphas turn on him because, one, they don't believe their story about Silas, and two, they believe very much that he kidnapped Ella against her will, and that is a big no-no in the camp. So he's kind of gets himself into hot water. And the next one is Taken by the Horde King by Zoey Draven, and this is book 5 in the Horde Kings of Dakar series. And in this one we're following Rune and Mina. So this one is sort of a fantasy sci-fi sort of book because it's set on the planet of Dakar. The hero is kind of an alien, if you like, but he is native to this planet, and our heroine Mina is human, and she's kind of like part of like a refugee sort of colony of humans on this planet. Now throughout this series there has been a red mist that's starting to spread across the planet, and it's really spreading quite far, and Rune's horde has been sent to basically keep an eye on the red mist, and he sort of sets up a bit of a camp outside the red mist and spends his days kind of walking around the edges trying to figure out what's going on and just kind of keeping an eye on things. Now on the other side of the red mist there is a group of humans who are living in the mountains, and Mina is among them, and they don't treat Mina very well. They're a corrupt bunch of humans, and in fact they are colluding with some witches on the planet, and the witches have promised them, you know, freedom, lots of food, really nice living accommodations, etc. if they bring them a Horde King, because they need the heart, and they claim they need the heart of a Horde King in order to stop this red mist. So what they also know is Mina, for some reason, seems to be immune to this red mist, because anyone that goes into it becomes very ill. All of their life is sucked out of them and they need to get out very quickly. But for some reason, Mina is immune to this red mist. So they pretty much coerce her into going into the red mist and persuade the Horde King with her sexual wiles to follow her into the red mist. And he does. And when he gets to the other side, they capture him. Now, he's not too happy with this arrangement. Obviously, he doesn't want to be captured, but it's not too long before the tables are turned. He escapes and he takes Mina captive for himself, because he's going to use her to figure out what the hell is going on, and their relationship goes from there. So I like this one because both the hero and heroine in this one are captives at some point, with the other one being the captor, and I really like that, the way that it starts out with him being the captive, but then the tables very much are turned and he basically takes her captive instead. So the next one I want to recommend is a mafia romance, and it's Bound by Vengeance by Cora Reilly, and this is book 5 in the Born in Blood Mafia Chronicles. So in this one we're following Growl and Cara. Now Growl is the enforcer for the Camorra Mafia in Las Vegas, and he's also the bastard son of Falcone, who is the head of that particular mafia branch. And so he's been brought up very much as a monster. He's scarred, he's tattooed, and he's feared by all. So Cara is a mafia princess, and she is engaged to be married to the sort of the money man for this mafia group. But basically her father is caught having betrayed Falcone, and Falcone takes his wrath out on the whole family. He kills her father and mother in front of her. What he actually ends up doing is offering her to Growl as a prize for Growl for his loyalty over the years, but also as a punishment to her, because everyone thinks that Growl is this absolute monster who's going to tear her apart, and so Falcone thinks this is absolutely a brilliant idea to basically hand her over to Growl, because he thinks she's going to suffer quite badly. And so Growl does take this opportunity. He does take her, he kidnaps her, he keeps her captive in his house, and pretty much locked in a room, but he has no intention of actually hurting her, because she's the most perfect thing that he's ever seen and the most precious gift that he's ever been given, and he's absolutely going to take care of it. And at first she is absolutely disgusted by what's happened to her and Growl himself, but over time she softens towards him and he learns to open up his heart to her, and they form a very interesting relationship. And the plot in this one is really, really good as well, and it ties very much back to, you know, the New York mafia, Italian mafia family that we've been previously following, and I guess bridges the gap as we move over to more towards the Cora mafia family as well. So really, really enjoyed this one and would highly recommend. Then it would be very remiss of me if I didn't mention Deliver by Pam Godwin, because this is a recent read that I've read and I absolutely love. So it's a pretty old book from Pam Godwin now. I imagine a lot of people have read this one, but if you haven't, I absolutely recommend it. It's extremely dark, quite harrowing to read in parts, but it's absolutely brilliant, an absolute masterpiece that Pam Godwin has written, in my opinion. I love this one. So this is book 1 in the Deliver series, and we're following Josh and Liv, and this is a reverse captive situation because it's Liv that captures Josh and takes him back to her lair. And essentially this is all based around human trafficking, and Liv's job is to kidnap her mark. So basically she's very much picked Josh out from a crowd. It's her job to kidnap him and train him to be a sex slave to the specifications of a master who's ordered him. So essentially it's sex trafficking for hire, and you can pick what you want from the catalogue, as it were, and Liv goes out, finds the perfect victim, trains them to be a sex slave, like I say, with a view to handing them over and selling them on once they're fully trained. The thing is, Josh is not trainable, and she can't break him and she can't train him, and Josh is a very strong individual. He very much holds on to his morals, his beliefs, and through that he can't bring himself to hate Liv, even though he realises that he probably should, and instead wants to save her. So while it's her that's captured him, and there is she does some horrible things to Josh, equally it's in their close proximity to each other. Josh very much learns more about her and helps her and figures out what's actually going on, and basically helps to save her essentially from the life that she's trapped in. So absolutely love this one. And book 2 in the series as well, which I've read, is Vanquish, and that's also a captive situation with another couple. So if you are really interested in that and you haven't read Deliver before, I'd definitely read it, and then I'd recommend the next one in the series as well. So then I've got Captured by Sinner by Michelle Hurd, and this is also a relatively recent read for me, and this is book 5 in the Sinner series. This is another mafia romance, and in this one we're following Victor, who's head of the Russian mafia, and Rosie. Now this was highly anticipated because pretty much from the second book in the series, Victor has captured Rosie, and that we know he's still got her, and in fact he keeps her captive with him for 3 years. And so as we see glimpses of them through the other books, I was very, very interested in getting to their story and finding out what happens. But essentially Victor, like I say, is head of the Russian mafia. Rosie is a mafia princess for another mafia group, and they have kind of betrayed Victor and the priesthood, and essentially they go in and kill her uncle and her grandfather. And when he finds her in the house and she's in her bedroom, he doesn't want her to be killed, because Nikolai is a hero from book 1, Nikolai would absolutely have killed her, but he decides he's going to save her and take her captive and take her back to his mansion. Now he at first decides he's going to keep her till she's 18, and in the back of his mind he's thinking, no, I absolutely want to keep her safe. I need to make sure that she's okay, but as soon as she's old enough to look after herself, then I'll let her go. But when he finds out that she's only a week away from her 18th birthday, he thinks a week is not long enough, and he decides he's going to keep her till she's 21. So essentially she is his captive, like I say, for 3 years. Now over the years, Victor very much falls in love with Rosie and wants her to choose to stay with him willingly, but Rosie fights it every step of the way, is not at all happy that she's in Victor's care, trapped in his house with him. And so when she turns 21, she does in fact leave, and he upholds his end of the bargain and lets her go, but he was right to keep her captive. She isn't safe when she leaves, and of course then she has got to answer some questions in her own mind about whether she is better off with Victor or going off on her own. So I absolutely love this one. Like I said, it was highly anticipated. I was really looking forward to their story, and it didn't disappoint at all. So if you haven't read this series yet, I would highly recommend it, if nothing else, just to get to the last book, because it was brilliant. So the next one up is Sick Heart by J.A. Huss, and this is book 1 in the Sick World series. Now, originally it was just a standalone, but recently J.A. Huss has brought out a second book in the series. So I'll be interested in picking that one up. Now, essentially this is dubbed as an MMA fighter romance, but it's way more than that, and it's really, really dark. And if you've watched my dark romance recommendation videos, then you've already heard me talk about this one. This one is very, very dark. It has a very dark sort of aesthetic in the book, very oppressive, and is quite grueling to read. I felt it's very, very long, harrowing, and quite painful to read, but it's also absolutely brilliant. And in this one we're following Court Van Breda, who is our MMA fighter, and Anya, who is his prize, because essentially there is this underground fighting ring. These fighters are born and bred to fight, and they're kind of in slavery in a way, so it's kind of almost like you know, they're forcing these humans to fight each other. They can use whatever means necessary. They always fight to the death, but the promise is that if you win 30 fights and you're still alive, then you can go free. And Court Van Breda, he is the reigning champion. No one's ever got to him before, and he's done 29 fights. He's just about to do his 30th one. But of course his owners don't want to lose him, so they plot to ensure that he's not going to win his next fight. But if they do win the fight, then they can basically have prizes, and one of the prizes for Court Van Breda for his final fight is Anya. When this fight happens, like I say, there is a bit of a scheme to try and make sure that he doesn't win the fight, but ultimately he does. And in fact, Anya saves him. But because of that, she becomes his prize, and he takes her away. But he takes her away to his island, which is where he trains to fight. And so she is now trapped on this island with him for quite some time. Now, the interesting thing about this is that both of them are mute, so neither of them speak. This is very much through choice, because of some trauma that has happened to them. And so in this captive phase between this couple, there is a lot of silence, and they communicate by actions, and he very much forces her to train with him. So it's, like I say, it's a very, very interesting book. I absolutely loved it, but it's quite grueling and harrowing in parts, and a lot of that, and this oppressive kind of aesthetic in the book that you get, is very much brought about by this sort of like quietness, and the fact that they don't speak to each other. But Court Van Breda is a very, very harsh and dominant person who kind of forces her to do these things on this island, and it's just fascinating, and I would really highly recommend it if you want something a bit different, but still definitely, I think, in the captive category. Then the next one is Beautiful Russian Monster by Odette Stone, and this is book 2 in the Vancouver Mafia Romance series. And in this one we're following Victor and Blair. Now, Victor is a right-hand man of Andrusha from book 1. At the start of this one, Andrusha and Olivia are in danger, and Victor is forced by this shady government body to kidnap Blair, our heroine in this one, in exchange for ensuring that Andrusha and Olivia are safe. So he's very, very reluctant kidnapper, but he basically agrees to do it. So at the very start of this book, we see him kind of, you know, stalking Blair a little bit, watching her movements, waiting for the right time to strike. Now, the heroine Blair is the granddaughter of this shipping tycoon who's very, very wealthy man, but has recently gone missing in very suspicious circumstances. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that there's something very shady going on with the fact that Victor is being asked by the shady government body to go and kidnap Blair, but also what's happened to the grandfather. Now, at first, he's very much going to hold is his end of the bargain, where he's going to kidnap Blair and then deliver her to this government group. But he kind of figures out pretty quickly that not everything is as it seems, and he decides that he's going to take Blair instead, kind of hostage, to be his captive while he figures out what's going on. And while at first they have very antagonistic relationship, Blair tries to fight him at every turn. Over time their relationship develops and they end up working together to figure out what is actually going on, what's happened to her grandfather, who this shady government agency is, and obviously form their relationship through that story as we go. Then the next one, another mafia romance, Deviant Hacker by Maggie, and I've actually got a physical copy of this one because I love the Mafia War series, and this is book 9 in that series, but also book 4 in the sort of O'Malley clan part of this series as well. In this one we're following Declan O'Malley, who is the family hacker. He is a genius with a computer, and we're also following Simona, another fellow hacker. Now what actually is happening here, so as part of the storyline, the O'Malleys are definitely have got a plan, and it revolves around sort of stocks and shares and things going on in the market. So they are trying to manipulate the stock market to their advantage so that they can gain from this. And so Declan has been very much putting stories out onto the internet that will kind of help them with this endeavour. But there has been a hacker on the other side, they don't know who this hacker is, who seems to be thwarting Declan at every turn. So every time he thinks that he's getting what he wants from this sort of like technical hackering perspective, somebody else comes in and overwrites his code or puts out stories that counter his own, and it's starting to really irritate him, and he started to try and find out who this other hacker is. But they're very clever, this other hacker. They cover their tracks really well, and it takes them a long time to track them down. And so in some of the other books we've seen that he's been trying to track this person down, and by the time he could get to Declan's book, he's figured out where this person is, and he decides that he's going to go in and kidnap them, take them to his basement, basically in his house, and his plan is to torture them to get information out of them about who they're working for, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and to try and stop them basically. However, he goes in, he does in fact kidnap this person, and then it's with great shock when he realises that the hacker is not a man as he suspected, but a lady, and it's Simona, and it's our heroine. And now he's got her trapped in his basement, and of course he should be spending his time torturing her to get information out of her, and instead he decides that he is going to embark on a bit of a relationship with her. There's some BDSM elements in here, there's a bit of daddy kink going on, and overall it's absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed it, and obviously contributes to the storyline as we build up to the final book in the series, so would highly recommend. Then I couldn't do this without talking about at least one book in this series, and I've picked Savage Hearts by JT Geissinger, and this is book 3 in the Queens and Monsters series. Now technically book 2 is also a captive situation, but this is my favourite. I absolutely love this one, and we do then get to go to Russia, which I absolutely love. So in this one, like I say, it's book 3 in the Queens and Monsters series, and then this one we're following Malik and Reilly. Now Reilly is the sister of Sloane, who's the heroine from book 1, and Malik is an assassin for the Russian mafia back in Moscow, and he is hell-bent on killing Declan, who is the hero from book 2, who's also head of the Irish mafia, and he is hell-bent on getting his revenge on Declan and basically killing him. But when he is about to do the deed, he spots Reilly, and he thinks that Reilly is kind of a bit of a sex slave or a call girl for Declan, and he convinces himself that Declan's going to do horrible things to Reilly, and he takes it upon himself to rescue Reilly from the situation and take her captive. Now in this sort of cat and mouse situation where he's trying to get Reilly and different things happen, she's caught in the crosshairs, and she's actually shot and injured quite badly. So Malik basically takes her to safety, gets her some medical attention, and then takes her back with him to Russia, to his cabin, several hours outside of Moscow where she cannot escape, and he nurses her back to health. And all the time Sloane and Declan are going crazy trying to figure out what has actually happened to Reilly and where Malik has taken her. I absolutely love this one because, like I say, he has taken her because he's attracted to her, he thinks he's saving her, but also because now she's injured and he's going to do a lot of caretaking as well. But also this is a mafia assassin, and so he's not particularly a, you know, soft, gentle kind of guy, and he's absolutely my kind of guy because he's alpha, dominant, possessive, won't take no for an answer, and basically I just love to see it when two people are forced in close proximity together and the hero completely softens for the heroine, and over time the heroine falls in love with the hero. So absolutely love this one, would highly recommend, and the audiobook of this one is fantastic as well. And then finally, I have just finished reading God of Pain by Rina Kent, and this is book 2 in the Legacy of the Gods series, and in this one we're following Creighton and Annika, a series where it's sort of a legacy series. So basically Rina Kent has previously written a series with the parents, if you like, and this is now the kids' stories, and they're all at this university on the island of Brighton off the south coast of England, and there's two rival universities, one where the English kids go, one where the American kids go, and basically obviously they're all kind of matched up together. They're in two sort of friendship groups, and they're kind of all matched up together, and this very much follows Creighton, who's from, you know, the English group, if you like, and Annika, who is very much part of the American group, but also a mafia princess because she is the daughter of a Russian someone very high up in the Russian mafia in New York, and her elder brother Jeremy is next in line for the throne. So really it's kind of like they shouldn't really be together. She in fact, one of the reasons that she wants to be with Creighton at all is because she is worried that she's going to be placed into an arranged marriage for the good of the mafia, but her mum has promised her that if she falls in love with somebody and they love her, then that she won't be forced into an arranged marriage, and she can have her pick of husbands. And so part of the reason why she has pursued Creighton is because she is hoping that he is the one for her and it will get her out of an arranged marriage. But Creighton is a very troubled hero. He has a lot of childhood trauma that he's trying to get over. He's been adopted by his parents and he's trying to figure out who his real parents are and what happened to them. Yeah, like I say, he's not a soft hero. And he is, after all, the god of pain. There's a lot of spicy scenes in this one, and Creighton is very much a sadist, but luckily for him, Annika enjoys that side of him. Now, this doesn't start out as a captive, so this is slightly outside of the norm as well, because it doesn't start out that the captive and then form a relationship during that captivity. This is a couple who are very much together. They're exploring their relationship with one another, and then something goes horribly wrong. They kind of have a third act breakup, except it's not really a third act breakup, it's kind of like a second act breakup, and Creighton decides that he's going to win her back. He decides that the best thing to do is to kidnap her and take her to a secluded island and force her to be with him when no one else can interfere in their relationship. So there you have it. That's 10 recommendations for Captor captive romances. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me. And if you have any recommendations for Captor captive romances yourself that you want me to read or you want to recommend to anyone else, then remember to put that in the comments box down below. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. They want to kind of, you know, I'm not explaining it very well, but because all of the heroes in this series are slightly on the psychopathic scale, so this is there's a lot of spicy scenes in this one. There is a lot of sort of like and they are forced to kind of confront their separate path. I'm not explaining this very well at all, but luckily it's the last book, so hopefully I'll be able to cobble it together. So we don't know where this person, no, she's the granddaughter. Cora is a mafia princess, and she's engaged to be married to the money man. Yeah, and she's engaged to be married to the money man in the Cora. Just gonna take a drink. And in this one, we're following Growl and Cara. Growl and Cara. Yes, I just double checked, and it is Cara. So, and